over 1 year, 10,000 miles, and 3 oil changes later, we've got real-world results for Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Hi, I'm Lake, the motor oil geek. Let's jump right into it. So just as a reminder, I've been using the 0W40 Pennzoil Ultra Platinum in my Porsche Boxster. Now previously I had run the Driven DI30, and the reason for that was the sheared viscosity, the HTHS, after mechanical shearing, because these engines have a bunch of timing change which can mechanically shear the oil. We've covered that viscosity breakdown in a previous video. I'll leave a link for that in the description box below. That sheared viscosity of the Driven DI30 actually matched very closely to the factory fill Mobil 1 0W40. So we wanted to see how the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40 compared to our reference oil for this engine, which was the Driven DI30. To do that, we had to flush out the Driven DI30. So we did that by using the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 5W30 as the initial flush, just to make sure we got out all the residual Driven DI30. Then we filled with the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40, and we did that twice. This engine uses a quart of oil about every 2,500 miles, and we really didn't see a big difference in oil consumption between the Driven DI30 or the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum products. If anything, maybe that 0W40 Pennzoil Ultra Platinum actually may have been a little bit better than the other oils. So there's only 1 quart of makeup oil for each of these samples. So let's talk about makeup oil just for a minute. If your engine is consuming oil at a high rate, let's say a quart per 1,000 miles. Well, if your engine only holds, say, 6 quarts of oil, in 3,000 miles, you've burned 3 quarts of oil and you've added it all back. If you take a sample at that time, well, you've actually replaced half of the oil in the engine already. So that's going to skew your results. So that's an unfortunate reality. If you have high levels of oil consumption, and we made a video about that before, so we'll leave a link for that in the description box below, it will skew used oil analysis results. So you might be wondering, why doing all of these flush oil changes? Well, the reality is, with these engines, it's hard to get all the oil out. So it actually takes a couple of oil changes to finally cycle out all of the previous brand oil. By doing these multiple oil changes with the same base chemistry, you're removing the previous chemistry, establishing the current chemistry, so you can get an apples to apples comparison. We do it on the dyno when we do engine oil testing, and we do it in the car when we do engine oil testing, so we can get accurate, credible results. And you can see there's a little bit of variance in the additive levels and the wear rate when you do that initial changeover, and that's just normal because you're removing one chemistry, installing the next chemistry, and you want to see, what does that chemistry really do? So these results reveal that. And most importantly, we can see that that 0W40 Pennzoil Ultra Platinum, it did a better job than the Driven DI30. And these oils are pretty similar in terms of their HTHS, the high temperature, high shear viscosity. Now, if we had tried maybe DI40 instead, that would have a higher HTHS because it's a 5W40. And it would have been more in that 13, 14 centistoke range versus the 12.5 centistoke range that we see with the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. So that really wouldn't have been as close to a fair comparison. I think in this case, the Driven DI30 is a more close comparison to the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40. And these results are great. And we've actually seen really good results in other engines from our speed diagnostics customers using the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40. So this is a really good bang for your buck synthetic oil. So what is the right interval for taking an oil sample? Ideally, you want to take a sample when you would normally be changing the oil, because that's going to give you the most information. Not only will it tell you the wear metals in the engine, but it will also give you an idea of what's that oil health for where you live, how you drive, and what your normal oil change frequency is. It will let you know if maybe you need to shorten that up, or hey, you can go longer. So that's the place to start. If the engine's giving you all kinds of problems and you need to investigate, well then obviously don't wait, take the sample now. But if you can, it's best to wait and take that sample at the normal oil change interval. So let's take a little closer look at these results. Compared to all the previous tests, the Driven Di30 was our best performing oil in this engine. So with a wear rate at 6.5 parts per million per 1,000 miles, the iron level is right at 8 parts per million, the copper at 6, the tin is at 8 parts per million. Now, that's really not from wear. The Driven Di30 contains Mobil 3000. We mentioned this in previous videos. It's a certain type of MODTC, a molybdenum anti-wear, anti-friction additive. Now that specific product, Mobil 3000, shows up with trace levels of tin when we do the RDE, the rotating disc electrode method, which is a different method than most labs use. Most labs use what's called ICP, inductively coupled plasma. That has a smaller particle size that it can see. The RDE, same ones that are used by Formula One teams at the racetrack, it sees a larger particle size. One of the unique things with the RDE method and with the Mobil 3000, we can see these trace levels of tin that really don't show up. Now what's cool is, if it was a different type of moly additive, you don't see those same trace levels of tin. So it's something very specific about the Mobil 3000 and the RDE method to let us see that. So in this case, we know that 8 parts per million, that doesn't count. That's actually from the Mobil 3000 in the Driven Di30. Of course, I know that because I formulated Driven Di30. Okay, out of the way is, if you look at it, total wear metals right at 21 parts per million with a little over 3,000 miles on the oil. Oil's doing a good job. When we compare that to the last sample of the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40, the iron's at 10 parts per million. There's not a really big difference between 8 and 10, especially this is at 4,600 miles. And then we look at the copper, 5 parts per million, that's really good. The aluminum on all these is very low. And another key test here is the particle count. Now we mentioned this in previous videos, but I'll give a quick little recap of particle count testing right now. The wear metal test can only really see particles up to about 10 microns if you're using the RDE method, smaller if you're using the ICP. And the key thing here is either method only sees metals. But modern engines contain things like timing chain guides and other parts of the engine that are plastic or non-metallic. So the particle count is a great way of actually seeing what's happening with not only particles that are non-metallic, it's also letting you see particles larger than 10 microns. So these numbers, these 3 numbers, are particles larger than 4 microns, larger than 6 microns, and larger than 14 microns. So every time one of those numbers increases by 1, it means the total number of particles in that range doubled. So the particle count is a great way of seeing just how dirty the oil is. So if my particle count is high, but my wear metals are low, it means I have a high level of non-metallic debris in the oil. The great news here is that we have a very low particle count along with low wear metals, which means the oil and the oil filter are doing a great job. There are trace levels of copper, tin, and lead in all of these samples. I have a little heavy foot sometimes, so none of these are bad. Everything is essentially single digits or very low double digits. These are great results. There's really not a giant difference here. And the good news, the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum got us to 5 parts per million per 1,000 miles on the wear rate. Now 5.4, that's close enough for government work. It's good, right? So this oil did a great job. And I can tell you, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum 0W40 costs a lot less than driven Di30 does. So this goes to show that price point alone doesn't mean everything when it comes to engine oil performance. One of the cool things about the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum is it really is winning with a less is more strategy. I get the questions all the time about, well, how about this oil? Because this has, 1,500 parts per million of whatever additive. And I always tell people, it's not about more, it's about having the right balance. And sometimes less is more. And these results are, again, proof positive of that. The Pennzoil Ultra Platinum has less additives at pretty much every juncture than the driven Di30, yet it performs better, at least in my engine, than the driven Di30 does. Again, just proof positive that more isn't always better. And I can tell you from looking at all the data that comes in from all of these samples, less generally does work better than more, especially when it comes to adding additives. Please don't do that. You typically hurt yourself more than you help yourself. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum was used by the Penske IndyCar teams in their Indianapolis 500 winning cars. Now, I don't know if they still use the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum in their cars today, but they did back in the day and were successful doing so, which is pretty impressive for an oil with the API donut on it. These results are from my engine, which is a very unique engine, as we've mentioned previously. It's also how I drive and where I live. So these results are meaningful to me. Don't take them as gospel for you. And that's a big problem we see often, is that there are many different environments. Here in North Carolina, we get all 4 seasons. Other places, it gets way colder for most of the year. Or other places, it's way hotter most of the year. I use premium top tier fuel. So I'm only using 93 octane fuel in this engine from a top tier provider. We've mentioned this in a previous video, that fuel quality also affects your results. So where I live, how I drive, the fuel I use, these are the results for me. Maybe you can take something from this and it would be helpful, but this is basically a single sample from one environment. So take it with a grain of salt. Don't run out and just say this is the best thing you ever do because it worked great for Lake. It might work great for you. I can't promise you that it will. Now, one really interesting thing has happened over the last year or so. You, the viewer, this incredible community of motor oil geeks have been incredibly supportive of me and my family through Speed Diagnostics. You've seen us do these samples and you've been doing samples. So what's really cool is we basically built a crowd-funded database from samples from all over the country, from all kinds of engines. So while these results from my engine are helpful, but they are limited in scope, the data that you guys have helped to generate, we're going to begin to show in future videos. And because that's multiple samples from all around the country, that data will be more instructive and beneficial. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications, because you don't want to miss some of these future videos when we begin to unpack the big data that you help create. Thank you again so much for not only watching the channel, supporting us via Speed Diagnostics, and stay tuned because we're going to start to give back those results that you helped create. Until then, check out one of these and we'll see you next time.